To Know Christ, a television ministry of the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, Wisconsin. Here's your host, Reverend Jeff Pedersen.
Well, we continue our series on leadership, and today our topic is communication. There's one thing about a leader. If this leader does this well, he or she will do well. But if the leader doesn't do this well, there's not going to be a whole lot of success in being a leader. And what that is communication. Leaders that communicate well succeed. Leaders who fail to communicate, well, their systems, their organizations, their churches, they fall apart. And so it's very imperative that a leader be a very good communicator. When you think about relationships, it has so much to do with communication. What is the communication that's going on between a husband and a wife? What's the communication that's going on between friends? What's the communication that's going on at the workplace? And so the leader has to always be communicating. The leader understands, what the mission of the organization is, the vision, the goals. And the leader is always communicating that to the other workers, to the other staff, to the members of the church, to say, this is what we are about. And so there's so many different ways of communicating now. And so it's inexcusable when communication doesn't happen. Always personal contact, one-on-one is always the best communication. But if we can't always be in proximity of each other, well, there is the telephone. We now have email, texting. There's just so many ways to communicate. And so I know sometimes as a leader, it gets very frustrating for me that when all of a sudden there hasn't been the proper communication, either because I have failed to communicate or somebody has failed to communicate with me. It's just like, how does this happen in this day and age? I mean, we've got all the different ways now to communicate. So why didn't it happen? When communication fails, you've got a lot of unhappy people. As I look at a company, for instance, a company that's healthy, doing well, where all the workers are happy, that's not by accident. It's because of good leadership. You've got a good leader. And what is this good leader good at? It's communication. I mean, when it comes to all the different roles and tasks and all the different positions within a company, the leader probably isn't nearly as skilled as, for instance, you would be in what you are doing. But yet, the leader sees the whole picture, understands the mission of the company, and is communicating that to everybody. And so the reason why this person is in the leadership position is because this leader communicates well. And so when you got the system of, when you have all the lines of communication going well, then the system is going to be strong. The organization can be strong, people are happy. But when that communication breaks down, I'll tell you what, you're going to have a lot of unhappy people, a lot of disgruntled workers. And so communication is key. For a Christian, communication begins with prayer. How do we have a relationship with God? Well, one of the big things is that we are praying. That's our communication. As we're praying to God, we're sharing everything that's on our heart, everything that's on our mind, all that concerns us. And what concerns us also means, what's going on in our lives as far as the people that we are with, the concerns. We communicate our joys. And then we listen to God, because as we are in prayer, then we're also into God's Word. And God is speaking to us through His Word, but also the Lord speaks to us as we pray. And one of the things the Lord does is that the Lord settles us down, eases our mind, helps us to think. And then God is putting thoughts into our mind. I know I can be so agitated about things, and I can be thinking, a certain way, and that way can be so false sometimes. And then I'll sit down and I'll pray, and the Lord will settle my mind down. And all of a sudden I'll have a whole different perspective. I'll have a whole different attitude, and that's what prayer does. And so when a leader is praying, that leader is getting inspiration from God. The leader is getting wisdom from God. The leader is being filled with God's love, God's compassion, God's concerns. But also, as the leader prays, the leader is getting passion. Passion for God, passion for the work of the church, passion for each other. Well, I guess that when passion does, and that then exudes from the leader. When a leader is passionate about what he or she is about, that just spills over into the people, where all of a sudden you start feeling, you start seeing other people that are joining you in that same passion. They get excited. They want to be part of it. And pretty soon they're growing. And they are working. And they take such a vested interest now in the church. But that starts with prayer. As we read in Luke chapter 11, verse 1, we learn that Jesus went by himself to a particular place to pray by himself. And that's very key for a leader, because a leader has to take care of oneself. And so part of taking care of oneself is that, a leader is a human. A leader has got all the emotions that everybody else has. And so a leader has all these emotions, but a leader also has one's mind. And so you got to be able to separate. You got to be able to differentiate between the two. Now, a lot of times when something happens, it's our emotions that first of all reacts. We react out of sadness. We react out of anger, out of frustration. And so we have to take care of our emotions, because as a leader, if you're all bottled up, that when something happens to the organization, like something happens to the church, if the leader is all emotionally bottled up and high anxiety, then everybody's going to look to the leader, and pretty soon they're going to be very anxious as well. Matter of fact, they're going to be very afraid, because they can see it in the face of the leader that things are not good right now. They can see that the leader is not handling this. And so how am I supposed to handle this now? And so that's where the leader goes to that private place to take care of oneself, to take care of one's emotions. One goes there by themselves to God and saying, God, I am so sad about this. I am so worried about this. I'm so angry about this that I can't stand it. Lord, right now I just don't know what to do. And so you go to your private place and you have that time with God and you take care of your emotion. You get it out. This prayer also serves as a catharsis, is that you're taking all this bottled up emotion and you're getting it out. And so what happens is that when you finally get it all out, then you're able to use your mind. Your mind kicks in. And generally when your mind kicks in, you're going to be able to figure it out. And so you take care of your emotions in your private place so that you're able now to go back in with the group that you are leading, and now you can actually lead them. They don't sense fear in you, but rather they sense a confidence in you. Because you are thinking. You have got some wisdom now. You're being directive. And so when the whole earth seems to be quaking and shaking within your organization, within your church, when everything seems like it's going to break apart, that's when you can lead. You go in there and you lead. You have a calm presence, and when you have a calm presence, and when you show that confidence, then pretty soon everybody's going to be confident with you, and they're going to calm down. When you say, yes, we're going through difficult times, but it's important right now that we all remain calm, and this is what we're going to do. People expect that in a leader. And when the going gets tough, they expect their leader to lead. I think about military commanders like generals in the heat of battle. When there's combat, there's all kinds of fighting going on. Don't you think that the general is concerned? Don't you think the general is worried? But yet the general is not there flying off at the handle, but rather the general is calm and is directing people. And the other soldiers can see that. We have confidence in our leader, and as our leader now is engaged in the game plan, the strategy here, that now the leader is directing us. And generally that general will get everybody through that conflictual, it will get them through that conflict. But if the general's all emotional and is losing it, well, then everybody now is in jeopardy. I think of a story, Jesus being the great leader, and that comes from Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Well, the point I want to bring out in this text, in this story, is that Jesus was with his disciples in a boat. And as they were out on the Sea of Galilee, this terrible storm came up to the point where it was rocking that little boat around to where these very experienced fishermen felt like this was it. This boat is going to break apart and we're going to perish. And at that point, they're looking for their leader. And there's Jesus asleep. It's just like, Jesus, you're our leader. This is not the time to be sleeping. But what does that suggest? That Jesus, he's not all upset about the storm. He's so calm right now that he can sleep. Jesus wakes up and just basically says, well, why is everybody so concerned? In his calm manner, he goes and he just then stills the storm. He calms the storm. What a leader. And so when you think of like the church, storms come up. Sometimes our church feels like it's that little boat on the Sea of Galilee being rocked around. And so as we look at our leader, and there's no pastor that's going to be like Jesus, where I think that they can just sleep like a baby at night, but yet you look for that calm. And so for a leader, you want to be communicating, during that time, using your head and being that calm. And so here again, when it comes to communicating, the leader has to understand what the mission of the church is, understanding the vision of the church, and then the goals that are set. And the leader is continually communicating that with the other workers in the church. And then that communication goes out into the congregation and say, this is what we're about as a church. This is our vision right now in carrying out our mission. And these are our goals, and we need all of you to be participating. And as you're working toward those goals, that you're continually communicating, this is what we are doing. This is where we are at. And at this point, this is what we need to be doing. And so there's always that communication that's going on. And if something bad is happening, let's say that you have a bad situation that's come up in the church, or maybe even somebody's in legal problems. Well, you don't say, well, I think we need to hide. As a leader, you don't say, I think we need to hide this from the church. Let's just sweep it under the rug, and in time, nobody will even know that it ever even happened. No, as hard as it is, the leader has to take that leadership and communicate, first of all, with the congregation, by sending out a letter and then having a meeting and to be able to say to the people, these are the facts. This is what has happened. This is now our options, and this is what we now need to do to get through this difficult time. And here again, if the leader shows confidence, then the congregation is going to respond and say, yes, we understand that this is the facts, because people, they need to know the facts. And this is what we plan on doing. And then generally the leader can lead the congregation through a very difficult time. But the last thing that members of the church want is to say, I don't want to be learning about stuff that's going on in our church in the newspaper. Or I don't want to be hearing all this gossip down at the coffee shop. And I don't want to be the last one to know. Why didn't I know about this? Why am I hearing this from Harry Smith, who doesn't even go to our church? See, now you got some real problems, because not only do you have the existing problem, but now because you don't have the proper communication, you got all these rumors going around. People are wondering, well, why was I left in the dark? Why was this swept under the rug? And so now they're angry. There's a distrust. And then you got all those issues that go along with that. I mean, pretty soon now what you have is a real mess. Good luck trying to clean it up. Okay, and so in communicating, for instance, if you have a staff, and then as you have the workers in the church, that everybody has to understand what their calling is, what their position is. Now, this is your job description. This is the expectations that the congregation has of you and what our staff has of you. And now, now you can have the expectations that this is what you can now expect from the congregation and the rest of the staff. Now, here again, you need one leader. I know sometimes people think, well, we can have co-leaders, and I've never really known where that has worked out very well, because like a football team, you can only have one quarterback on the field at a time. You can't have two people directing. Now, that's really going to get confusing for everybody. As much as the leader needs to be, working collegially with everybody else and saying, well, I'm a team player with you, that still, when it comes right down to it, there can only be one leader. I've made this point before, but as good as Brett Favre is as a quarterback, and as good as Aaron Rodgers is as a quarterback, the Green Bay Packers cannot have them both on the field at the same time. And those players, it's going to be misery. They're not even going to be able to call a play. And so that's where a quarterback comes and calls a play, and everybody then knows that, our mission, this is the play, this is the goal, and everybody's in their place. And everybody understands what their position. Now, the quarterback knows what everybody on the field, all of the different players, what their position is, and what they're going to be doing on the play. The quarterback knows that. And not to say that it's not good for the rest of the players to know that, but for the most part, the left guard is going to say, okay, this is the play and this is what I need to do, and I don't necessarily need to know exactly what the receiver is going to be doing on this play. Just as the receiver knows what they're going to be doing on this play and may not necessarily know what the fullback is going to be doing on this play. The quarterback knows all of that. But you just need to be in your position doing your position. Now, I know when I played football, everybody had their nicknames. Remember, we had one guy who was playing left tackle his nickname was Crow. And then our receiver's name was Goober. And so it's like, Crow, you do your job. Don't be worrying about Goober. Goober knows what to do on this play. And so that's the way it is with a leader. The leader knows the whole picture. And the leader now is directing people. When the leader understands what the mission, what the vision and the goals are, and is communicating that, then the leader is directing people, saying, no, Crow, you are the organist, and so you stay out of the treasurer's business. You do your job. The treasurer's doing a good job, and you're doing a good job. And we have to continue to do that good job together. And so, as I think about what James wrote in James chapter 1, verse 19, James says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. And so a leader, first of all, wants to be a good listener. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And so the leader is always, listening to the workers. Or in the case of a church, listening to other staff members, listening to the members of the congregation. And being a good listener is very important, taking the time, trying to sympathize with this person from the standpoint, trying to put yourself in that person's shoes. Because a lot of times as a leader, why is this person doing this? Why is this person acting this way? Why is this person doing their job this way? Well, if you sit the person down and listen to them, well, pretty soon you're going to find out. And so it's important that you learn as you listen. So as you're listening to this person, you're learning. A second thing is that you give undivided attention. As you're listening to somebody, you're not thinking about something else. Or as you see the television or the newspaper, you're not kind of somewhat distracted by or what somebody else is doing. You got to keep focused. Okay, listen to this person. Are you hearing what this person has to say? Don't jump to hasty conclusions. I know it's very easy that you start hearing a person and right away, just like that, you've jumped to the conclusion, and your conclusion is going to be very wrong. And so you got to listen to the person all the way through. I know sometimes you can become impatient, and you just want to jump to the conclusion, oh yeah, I know where this is heading. And normally it doesn't head that way. And don't add your story. When somebody's sharing their story, right away it reminds you of all these stories that you've had that are similar. Well, that's not our concern right now. The concern is the person who is speaking to you, their story. You say, no, it's your story that's important, not mine. And just to convey as you listen that this person is important, meaning that as you're listening to this person and you see somebody else walking in the room, somebody that you may think is more important, and all of a sudden you say, hey, and you start talking to that person, as this person is not even done sharing what they're sharing, they're going to feel hurt. And so by listening, you are communicating that you care, that you're important, that I'm taking the time. And so who's ever working with you, as you are the leader, they're going to appreciate when you give them the time as you listen, and to listen actively as you are listening. Sometimes just interject saying, okay, or sometimes even verbatim, just repeat back something. And then when they're done, then finally you say that if I've heard you right, this is what you've said. And they will generally say yes, or they can clarify if you haven't quite understood it completely. Okay, once you've listened and you've heard and you've understood correctly, then you've earned the right to speak. And generally what you have to speak now is going to be wise. And it's not how much you speak, it's what you speak. A lot of times after you've listened and you understand clearly, it doesn't take a whole lot of words now to be able to explain or to direct or to advise. Some of the most profound things that have ever been stated are just like phrases. That's somebody who has really learned and has understood the situation, and now they are speaking in a very intelligible way. And so do you see where listening really helps? You learn, you understand this person, you understand the situation through learning. Now you're able to speak in a way that's going to be helpful. And like James says, is that you're slow to anger. Well, by the time you've gotten to this point, now you're not angry anymore. But if you haven't taken the time to listen, and you're just jumping to hasty conclusions, well, you're going to be angry with everybody. Nobody's going to be any good. And so as you speak, I always think about the words that the Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 3. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. And so you speak in love. And so some things that are very important as a leader, as you're working with other people, is that one of the things is that you praise your workers. If you praise your workers, you're going to get 100% more out of them. It's proven. I studied this in my psychology classes. But if you're criticizing your workers, that's like taking a hatchet to them. And pretty soon you're going to see their work production go way down. So praise your workers. The second thing is to give thanks. To show appreciation for your workers. To say thank you for your job. Thank you for your work. Well done. And I'll tell you, everybody likes a pat on the back. Acknowledge your workers. In other words, when your workers have done something, let everybody know about it. Don't take the credit yourself. Give the credit to where credit is due. Saying, this worker that we have, this is what this person has done. What a great work. And so some things that you don't want to be doing is that you don't want to have a silence treatment. When it comes to communicating, you don't want to be silent. You don't want to be stonewalling. You don't want to be avoidant. But always directly communicate with the person. You don't want to be into game playing, where you are sending indirect messages where people think, well, this is the line of communication, or really you're trying to communicate something down here. People, they don't like that. They don't like indirect messages. Triangling, this is where you have a problem with somebody. And so instead of going to that person directly, well, I'll go to this other worker and I will share all my frustrations about that person. And then that person will generally go to that person and say, well, do you know that our leader is upset with you? And so then this person is going now to that person saying, well, why are you upset? And so do you see, well, pretty soon what's going to happen is this person in the middle is going to get smacked. And so don't triangle. It's not fair to the other workers in a church or the organization. And so you're not out as a leader to get the last word. Sometimes to be humble, to say, I was wrong, I apologize, or you make a good point. I tell you, workers will really appreciate that when they see that, when you validate them. And so a leader is always firm, but firm in love. It's not like as a leader you're just expecting everybody to take advantage of you. I mean, sometimes what people think, when you're kind, then everybody's going to take advantage of you. Well, no, you always set your boundaries as a leader. You be firm. You communicate what needs to happen. But you do it in love. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to that person directly. Bring out the points that concern you. Say, these are our options. But then you say, this is how we can improve, and you speak it in love. So leaders, be good communicators.
You've been watching To Know Christ with Reverend Jeff Pedersen, pastor at the Lutheran Church of Peace, Platteville, Wisconsin. Reverend Pedersen's 12-part marriage series, The Tie That Binds, is available as a DVD box set. To learn how you can obtain the DVD box set of The Tie That Binds and its companion book, call KFXB-TV, Dubuque, Iowa, 563-690-1704. Thank you for watching this program. I'm Robert Snyder. Tune in again for To Know Christ.